So what do you think about this playoff situation, Claire, with the Buckeyes, considering that the Clemson-Miami winner is in from the ACC, the Georgia-Auburn winner in from the SEC, Oklahoma, if they take care of business against TCU, in from the Big 12. So we have a number of possibilities and quite the argument between, where does this sound familiar? The one-loss team that didn't win their conference versus the two-loss team that did win their conference. So try to take off your scarlet and gray. Just if that's possible, take off your scarlet and gray. Do you think Ohio State should make the playoff if they win the Big Ten championship? And the other question would be, try to put yourself in the committee's shoes. And do you think they will select Ohio State against, let's say, Alabama being that one-loss non-conference champ that poses the biggest threat?
So I will do my best to take off my scarlet and gray. The playoff system was designed to be the four best teams on the field, and it's difficult for me, even as an Ohio State fan, to say that the 55-point, that loss at Iowa, even though it was a tough road environment and a conference foe, it's hard to say that Ohio State is one of those four best teams. I'm curious as this weekend what they will do against Wisconsin. If it is one of those situations, 4 out of the last 5 of these games have been decided by 7 points or less. Ohio State has won all 5 of those, and we know what that 5th one is that 59-0 Big Ten championship in 2014. But it's always been a scrappy game. And unless Ohio State has another blowout with Wisconsin, it's really tough for the committee to justify this Power 5 conference championship winner being in. And there are other conference championship winners that are going to be left out, I believe. And it's to make room, I think, for a one-loss Bama, in my opinion. I think Nick Saban has a very loud megaphone, and they lost to a very good Auburn team. And I can't be a hypocrite as an Ohio State fan. Them going in and having the one loss and then end up getting to go to the playoff and getting embarrassed by Clemson is not something that we ever wanted to see. I don't know how much I respect who Alabama has played so far, but other than obviously Auburn, who they lost to. But it's difficult for me to say no, absolutely not, when Ohio State clearly was able to do it last year.
My stance is not going to be hypocritical because at this point last year, after the Big Ten championship game, I tried to be as clear as possible, and a lot of people still misread it, that I thought Ohio State was one of the 4 best teams in the country. However, I would not have selected them to go to the playoff because they did not win the Big Ten championship. Those are 2 different arguments for me. I know that the selection committee is charged with selecting the 4 best teams. And so since that is the assignment, that's what they need to do. I would approach it differently. I would look at resume. I don't believe that Wisconsin, I think they're a very good team. I think they're undervalued. I think they're one of the 8 or 10 best teams in the country. I don't think they're one of the 4 best teams in the country. And unless they show us something completely that we didn't expect against Ohio State, and it's 59-0 the other way, I don't think there's anything that Wisconsin can do on Saturday to prove to anyone, including myself, that they're one of the 4 best teams in the country. But in my book, they will have earned the right to be selected among the 4 teams by going undefeated, winning one of the best conferences in the country. So this year, the case I will make for Ohio State is that, yes, losing at Iowa, and I hate a system that forces us to evaluate losses and wins and not just take it as a win, a loss, but it's a beauty contest, and it has to be because there's not enough spots. So you have to evaluate the wins and losses. So going to Iowa losing 55-24 is different than if the Buckeyes would have went up there and lost 20-17 on a last-second field goal. However, what's not being calculated in this argument, and this is the game that's brought up constantly by Alabama supporters and Ohio State detractors. You went to Iowa, you gave up 55 points. I heard somebody say this week on a national show, they said, the reason I would put Alabama in the playoff over Ohio State is I cannot imagine Alabama going to Iowa and giving up 55 points. I totally understand that. I can't imagine it either, but I was all over Twitter going crazy saying, since when do we select playoff teams on what we can imagine happening?
Right. You can't.
To my point, I said, and it took a little interpretation and definition to explain this tweet, but I said, and you would have believed or imagined Alabama losing to Pitt last year? And my immediate response I got from a number of people was, Alabama didn't lose to Pitt last year. You don't know what you're talking about. You know what? I do know what I'm talking about, because you're comparing Alabama and Ohio State, two teams that could be meeting in the playoff or that you're comparing them against. Last year, Alabama lost a national championship game to a team that lost to Pitt, that no one would have ever thought could have lost to Pitt, but they won the national championship.
And Pitt put another wrench in the plans this year with Miami.
Yeah, possibly. And the other thing is, let's for a second focus on wins and not losses. Who as good as Michigan State has Alabama beaten 48-3?
They don't have that. They don't.
Yeah, they don't have that.
I think the committee has shown directly after the Clemson loss to Syracuse that they are not devaluing a team as harshly for a quality of win or loss. They want to see, quality of loss. They want to see a quality of win, like who have you beat? So that's, I think, your point to not having Alabama in, not just only that they're not going to a conference championship, but they don't have that signature win. They don't have a team of that caliber that they have absolutely dominated. And Clemson, their resume keeps getting better and better over the year, which I kind of struggled with supporting. And I was not excited about them being in the top four after that loss to Syracuse. But it's starting to look better. And I agree. I think that would be the situation, but I don't know that the committee is going to agree with me on that.
So Ohio State beat Penn State. I don't think there's any question that Penn State is better than any game Alabama has won this year. That is the best win between the two teams. In addition to that, while we are rating losses and the disparity of score in losses, Ohio State at Iowa, we need to do the same, therefore, in the wins. So my Michigan State example is basically Michigan State's on that same plane, very close to LSU and Mississippi State. Those are Alabama's two wins, two best wins, Mississippi State and LSU. Alabama squeaked by Mississippi State, and they beat LSU, not handily. It was a close game. It turned out to be a two-score game at the end, 24-10. Ohio State annihilated Michigan State. So that could almost counterbalance the other argument of the losses, in my book.
Whether we like to admit it or not, it does come down to whose teams Heine's fill seats. And, it's not like we like to think about that, but certainly Ohio State and the blue bloods of college football do that. I think it would be a different conversation if it was somebody like, maybe like a TCU or a Boise State or Western Michigan that was knocking on that door. But that certainly complicates things a little bit.
Yeah, you got two blue bloods matched up in this one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not an Ohio State versus TCU and Baylor situation again this time around.